Welcome back to Attack of the Show. We are live and talking about the controversial Columbine video game. Before the break, we asked you, should Super Columbine Massacre RPG have been pulled from Slamdance? Well, according to you, 58% of you said it should not have been pulled. Let's go over to Kevin, who is actually working on an RPG about his own life.
Yeah, I am. It's all adventure, zero action. Once again, folks, Columbine is in the press, but this time it's actually because of a video game based on the shocking events. Now, Super Columbine Massacre RPG, yes, that's the name, recreates the incident and puts you in the shoes of the gunman. Now, with all the controversy at Slamdance, many people are saying that a line needs to be drawn. So here's the rundown on the story that is bringing the issue of video game censorship to the forefront. Super Columbine RPG recreates the morning of April 20th, 1999, and asks players to relive that day through the eyes of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the two responsible for the deadliest school shooting in American history. The game was a finalist in the Slamdance Guerilla Game Maker competition until the festival's president, Peter Baxter, pulled the game from the competition to avoid potential lawsuits. Slamdance says, quote, "There are moral obligations to consider with this particular game and the preservation of the Slamdance organization and its whole community," end quote. Now, almost half the competition's 14 finalists have withdrawn their entries. They call Slamdance's move an insult to their medium. How real is too real? Is Slamdance's position justified? And why are video games held to a higher standard than that of their film counterparts at the same festival? Decide for yourself, folks. It's The Loop. Joining us via satellite tonight from Park City, Utah, home of the Sundance and Slamdance film festivals, the creator of Super Columbine Massacre RPG, Danny Ledonne. And from Denver, gaming writer and for Rocky Mountain News and editor for Kotaku.com, Brian Crescente is back for more. Welcome, gentlemen, to The Loop.
Hi.
Danny, I'd like to start with you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I've been doing all the research. I read the artist statement on your website, and I'm not entirely sure I buy it. In fact, some people have called you disingenuous at best. So please do me and everybody else at home the favor. Take us back to the day you discovered RPG Maker. What went through your head when you decided to make this game? Like, why make a game based on Columbine?
When I discovered RPG Maker, it occurred to me that I could spend the next 6 months working on a game. And I asked myself, if I can make a game about anything I wanted to, what would I want to make a game about? And honestly, because I was a high school student in Colorado at the time that Columbine occurred, it's an issue that never went away in my mind. And I knew that I wanted to make a game that mattered, something that was personally important. I had no idea if anyone else would ever play it, but I knew that this was something that I wanted to explore for me and from my understanding of what really happened.
All right, and you sat down, you toiled away, you did extensive research, which I have to give you kudos for there. And 6 months later, you came out with this game. And Brian, I know you've been following the story very closely. You've played the game. Right. What do you think of Danny's game?
I think that it's an interesting concept. I think what he was trying to do is genuine. I just think that perhaps the message might get lost in the medium. Part of the problem is it's a game that's, it's an RPG, so it's got you doing a lot of actions over and over again, and the message that he's trying to deliver is sort of stuck within these hours of gameplay.
So, Danny, how do you feel about that? Do you think that the medium might have actually gotten in the way of the message here, that people see a video game based on the events, they see shooting in a cafeteria, and they don't bother to figure out why you decided to put this on a computer screen?
I think the message is absolutely lost in the medium because we understand often that games are children's toys. The average gamer is 33 years old, but most people don't know this. And so the idea that you could take a video game and address a real serious issue in our culture is still a very new one, and one that a lot of people aren't prepared to accept on face value.
Sure, and it's one thing to address an issue with the game, but this particular title has raised several issues. And Brian, Slamdance and even Sundance, they have films that tackle sort of equally controversial topics, yet in 13 or 12 years, there's been zero censorship of any of these films, pulling the game out of fear of a lawsuit. I mean, are they justified, Brian? Do you think that was the right move?
No, I think it would be justified if they decided to never enter the game. But once the game's entered, and not only entered, but actually becomes a finalist, why wait till just before the final selection to choose a winner to actually say, no, we've now decided the game isn't worthy? The game hasn't changed. What's changed is the controversy, I guess.
Danny, were you surprised at all when you found out that your game was pulled? What was your reaction?
Well, honestly, while I may have been surprised that the game was pulled, I was more surprised that they asked me to submit it to begin with. Because quite honestly, for them to say, we want your game in the competition, please submit it, was almost a way of really taking on a lot of courage, because this game has a proven paper trail of being very divisive and controversial. So it really is a double-edged sword in that light. I just wish that Slamdance would have been able to stand up for their convictions and stand behind a game that they saw having a lot of merit for the game-making community.
Sure. And Brian, what do you think? Is this a case of Slamdance not standing up, or do you think they would like to have the game in the finalists? They just really can't afford the lawsuit, and that's why they're backing down?
You know, it's hard to say. I spoke with Peter Baxter right after the announcement was made, and I spoke with him probably for 30 or 40 minutes, and 90% of that phone call was me trying to get him to answer that question, or
Right.
answer the question why.
And they're just not answering it? They're reluctant to answer?
I've actually talked to Peter about this in the last couple of days. We've done a lot of talking, myself, Peter Baxter, Game Festival Director Sam Roberts, and what's clear to me now is that Slamdance simply doesn't have the resources, financially and otherwise, to spearhead this battle that really needs to be waged on the front of games to be able to handle these issues.
Sure.
And it's unfortunate because Slamdance really sets itself up to be that advocate. But in this case, I think the scale of this confrontation between politics, video games, the legal system is a bit bigger than one festival to accommodate.
Right. And, well, festival aside, Danny, there's another issue here, and that's, you know, as video gamers, I'm sure yourself, Brian, myself here, we know that video games perhaps aren't the root of the cause of a lot of violence. There's many other factors and many other issues at play. But I do have to bring up, last year there was a school shooting at Dawson College, and you're very, very well aware of this case because, you know, 19 people were injured, one person was killed, and the shooter said on his own blog, his personal blog, that your game was one of his favorites. And by no means am I implying that you're in any way responsible, but I do have to ask, do you feel that in addition to raising questions about events like Columbine, that you might have maybe glorified them by making a game about it, or perhaps even desensitized the shooter in this case to these type of events?
Right, I think if you're looking for a murder simulator, mine is not really the game to pick up for that reason. The game is laced with a lot of literary references. It's a role-playing game where the player encounters a lot of facts about the case. I feel it's very unfortunate that Kim Vir-Gil did what he did in Dawson College, but of course we need to recognize that video games are not the cause of this kind of behavior. In fact, my game was made as a response to the idea that video games should be demonized or vilified as scapegoats for the kinds of things that go on in our culture today.
All right, well, I want to thank you, both Danny and Brian, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you guys keeping us in the loop. Listen, the controversy over violence in video games has raged since the Pac-Man days, really. But at what point will the same freedom of expression that all other creative mediums share be given to video games? You know, the Columbine game, it may not win any awards at Slamdance, but what it has done is push the envelope further regarding the definition of what a video game is or what it can be. And I applaud Danny for that.